I don't know whether it's normal for a nation to seal or identify a tough tackling centre back as that GOAT. It's normally a flair player, but I think that probably speaks to the attitude and the resilience that we have around our All Whites. He is on track to be the all-time great. And I think, at minimum, a win at a World Cup, maybe it's coming in 2026. This is probably his last chance to achieve that dream, would be probably the accolade which underwrites his status as the all-time GOAT. If he is selected in the final 26 to make that trip to North America, that will complete perhaps a world first or a rare mother-son combination to play at a FIFA World Cup, which is quite a cool thing to achieve. And then it becomes roll up your sleeves in a backs against the wall performance, which we know we are capable. That's in our DNA. That is what we are able to do. But I think it's being able to surprise with our ability to play that is going to be the key for this side in 2026.
Welcome everybody to Make Football Great Again, your definitive 48-nation roadmap to the 2026 World Cup. I'm Harry Brent, and over the coming weeks and months, we're going to be profiling every single nation heading to the tournament this summer to find out more about the countries, the cultures, the fans, and the teams, and hopefully we'll uncover a few little secrets and stories along the way too. As for today, though, we're covering New Zealand, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Seamus Marten, creator and host of the Between Two Beers podcast. Not a bad place to be, between two beers, I must say. Seamus, pleasure to have you on, mate. How are you keeping?
Kia ora, thank you very much. Very, very well. Super excited for the upcoming World Cup, and great that our little nation at the bottom of the world is qualified for the first time in 16 years.
Yeah, must be raring to go, absolutely. So in a second, we're going to find out, we're going to learn all about New Zealand and what we can expect from them at the tournament. But before we get officially cracking, I just want to kick off with a segment I like to call One Truth and One Lie. So what I'm going to do, Seamus, is I'm going to present two seemingly crazy facts about the New Zealand national team. One of them is 100% true fact. The other one, it's completely made up. And it'll be up to you to try and decipher which is which. So I'll read them back to back, and then you let me know which you think is the real one. So, fact number one. New Zealand's football team are known as the All Whites, as opposed to the rugby team, the All Blacks. But this nickname was actually a result of a massive laundry accident. In 1922, the team sent their traditional black jerseys to be cleaned before a game against Australia. But the cleaners used industrial strength bleach and accidentally turned the kits white. New Zealand won the game and decided to keep the colour. Fact number two. During their 1970 World Cup qualifying campaign, New Zealand played both their home and away legs in their tie against Israel in Israel. This is because the New Zealand FA was so broke at the time that they couldn't afford to fly the Israeli team to New Zealand, so decided to stage both legs in Israel. So, Seamus, let me know, which is the true fact? Were New Zealand originally the All Blacks before a laundry accident turned their kit white, or did they play both games again, the home and away legs against Israel in run up to the 1970 World Cup in Israel? Which do you think is true?
I think the Israel fact is the true one, but I'm second guessing myself. But I'm gonna set my stall out and suggest that we played Israel home and away in Israel.
Bang on. Absolutely true. Yeah, you've always been the All Whites as far as my research goes. And yeah, the Israel fact is true. For what it's worth, the game finished 6-0 on aggregate to Israel. They won one leg 4-0, the other leg 2-0. I can't remember which is the home and away leg. Does it matter? Probably not. But it shows just how far New Zealand as a footballing nation has come, I guess, in the last 50, 60 years. So there's that. New Zealand. So they've only qualified for 2 World Cups in the past, once in 1982 and again in 2010. They're yet to win a game at the World Cup, but they're also one of the few teams to have had an undefeated World Cup campaign, doing so at South Africa 2010, where they drew all 3 of their group games, including a 1-1 draw against 4-time champions Italy, though it was unfortunately not enough to see them seal passage to the knockout rounds. This summer, they're in Group G alongside Kevin De Bruyne's Belgium, Mo Salah's Egypt, and as things stand, Iran. We'll see what happens with the political climate. Maybe they'll take part, maybe they won't. We'll have to see about that later. Win the group, and New Zealand will face a best-ranked third-place side in the last 32. But if they finish runners-up in the group, they'll face the runners-up from Group D, which could be Australia. Fancy that. That could be a hell of a
good.
New Zealand can, of course, still qualify for the knockout rounds if they finish third, but they have to pick up enough points to be one of the top 8 third place teams at the tournament. But before we get into the weeds about the 2026 World Cup, Seamus, I just want to begin with a section we call the travel log. So before we talk players and tactics and what we can generally expect from New Zealand this summer, or I suppose winter where you are, although tournaments in the Northern Hemisphere, we'll stick with calling it summer. I just want to learn a bit more about the country, the culture, the history, footballing history of New Zealand. So kick us off with a big question. Who is New Zealand's footballing GOAT?
It's a great question. I was lucky enough to be in camp with the New Zealand All Whites, the men's national team, before the last set of matches before they jet off to the World Cup. And inside the team camp, they actually have four legends, as they call them, 4 pioneers, as they call them. So one of them is Steve Sumner, who was the captain of the 1982 team, who our equivalent of the FA Cup. The Steve Sumner medal is given to the best player of that competition. So Sumner is up there on the Mount Rushmore, for want of a better term. Winton Rufer, who was the man that scored the goal which qualified us for the first World Cup in 1982, made his name in the Bundesliga with Werder Bremen in the late 80s and 90s, is also up there. And then the two that people probably will resonate with most are Ryan Nelson and Winston Reid, who were the cornerstones of the 2010 campaign. So Ryan Nelson, I think for me personally, that's my generation. So Ryan Nelson would be New Zealand's footballing GOAT. But I think if you ask people, probably a generation before me, they'd land on either Steve Sumner or Winton Rufer, I should say. So look, in terms of the GOAT, I'm going to land on Ryan Nelson. I don't know whether it's normal for a nation to seal or identify a tough tackling centre back as that GOAT. It's normally a flair player, but I think that probably speaks to the attitude and the resilience that we have around our All Whites. So Ryan Nelson is New Zealand's footballing GOAT.
We'll perhaps come on to him in a little bit, but is Chris Wood on the way to becoming that as well?
Oh, look, I think Chris Wood is synonymous now with New Zealand's All Whites. I think the fact he is still playing, he is still active, I think he will surpass those 4 names that I mentioned before. I think the feats that he is achieving, or hasn't achieved, so far through injury this season, but definitely over the, recent memory, it puts him in such a high standard in terms of New Zealanders really on the world stage. I do think in this country there still is an underappreciation for just what he's doing. I think if you talk to Woodsy himself, he looks back and realises just how far he has come from a sleepy old town about 15 minutes out from where I call home here in the middle of the North Island in New Zealand. But look, very much so, he is on track to be the all-time great. And I think, at minimum, a win at a World Cup, maybe it's coming in 2026. This is probably his last chance to achieve that dream, would be probably the accolade which underwrites his status as the all-time GOAT.
What would you say is New Zealand's most celebrated footballing result?
I was there. 14th of November 2009, New Zealand 1, Bahrain 0. The match was played in Wellington. It was back in the old days of the home and away intercontinental playoff. New Zealand had qualified in 1982 and had been a long time between drinks. And that game, if you ask anybody, any football fan where they were, they know exactly where they were. When Rory Fallon headed in the 45th minute, when Mark Paston made a save in the second half, I know exactly who was standing to my left. I know exactly who was standing to my right. And it was an amazing day. You don't get sporting occasions like that all too much here in New Zealand, but it was a road trip for me personally. Left my home, travelled down to Wellington, the nation's capital, and as you got closer and closer, the flags were there, the shirts were there, and there was a real sense of anticipation that this was going to be our one shot for glory. And it's a night which is long regaled, not only in football circles but in New Zealand sporting circles as well, as being, one of the big nights there. Compare and contrast to how New Zealand qualified for this World Cup in 2026. It was a win against New Caledonia at Eden Park, but it just didn't have the same gravitas of taking on a team from another confederation away from home, scrapping to a 0-0 draw, and then coming home and getting a result. And I think just those two things, a headed goal from a corner and then a penalty save, that's all the drama that you want in a game that really matters. So for me, that Intercontinental Playoff 2009 is by far New Zealand's most celebrated result. And that goes over and above the 3 draws at the World Cup in South Africa, consequently. You'd probably think a 1-1 draw with Italy, the reigning world champions, would be that. But I think just the weight of anticipation before that Bahrain game wins it for me.
If New Zealand get knocked out at the tournament this summer, who's the one country that fans would hate to see lift the trophy?
The lazy answer would be Australia, right? Because of this Anzac rivalry. But I dare say there'd be a number of New Zealand football fans that wouldn't mind seeing our friends from across the ditch lift the World Cup trophy. There is something about the underdog kind of feeling of being two nations, in the Pacific Ocean. I think that would be a really nice thing. But look, I don't really feel like there is a team or a real arch nemesis that New Zealanders would hate to see lift the World Cup. I think the opposite. We're happy that we're just participating in it. So, when we eventually get knocked out, I've got no delusions of grandeur that New Zealand is going to be holding aloft the Jules Rimet trophy. But when we get knocked out, I think we'll just like to see how the rest of the tournament pans out.
Is there much, obviously sort of close connection with, or historical connection with England? Is there a like of England, a dislike of England? What's the feeling in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think if you ask me the reverse question, who would New Zealanders like to see lift the World Cup trophy? I do feel like the romance of seeing the Three Lions lift that trophy, for the first time since 1966 would be a lot of New Zealanders' answer. I think there's a real strong connection. The Premier League here is the product that most kids fall in love with when they do enjoy the sport. Everybody here has a Premier League team that they support. And the fact that we're playing them in a warm-up game, I think almost possibly overshadows the fact that we've got 3 games in the tournament proper. The fact that we get to take on England, prior to it's a glamour fixture. I think it's right up there with the opportunity to play Brazil. But I do feel like if Tuchel can get that squad together and England end up winning it, there would be a lot of happy Kiwis over here. Put it that way.
We'll return the favour. We'll support you in the next Rugby World Cup.
Sounds good.
Speaking of rugby, obviously the big sport generally in New Zealand, but is football slowly beginning to catch it up? You had the Women's World Cup in 2023 staged in New Zealand and Australia. The New Zealand National League, the kind of Premier League equivalent, launched recently. Chris Wood, obviously, as we've mentioned, doing great things for Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. Is football, becoming building itself up as just a sort of mainstream popularity now?
Look, it's an age-old question. In terms of participation numbers, football dwarfs the other sports here in New Zealand. There is a drop-off, and I do feel like the drop-off is because we don't have our own premier product here in the country. Our best exports have to go overseas to play, and then we don't get that contact that we do have with rugby. I host a podcast here in New Zealand, Between Two Beers. We've had the top New Zealand footballers on, and we've had our All Blacks on, and by far the audience is just drawn to rugby and to a rugby audience. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool football fan from way back as well, but I've got a soft spot for rugby as well, and I want to see the All Blacks do as best as they can on the world stage. So look, while the popularity is growing, I still say we sit in the shadows of rugby. We still sit in the shadows of cricket. I think, the key to it is we're seeing a shift with Auckland FC joining the Wellington Phoenix and Australia's A-League. Having our young kids fall in love with heroes that are tangible, that they can relate to, that they can see every 2 weeks from the stands, I think is going to make a big difference. But, the best rugby players in the world come out of this country. The best rugby players in the world play week in, week out in this country. So that's a battle which is really hard to win. But if we do have players like Woodsy doing their very best on the world stage, then hopefully it opens the door for a few others to follow suit as well. But for right here, right now, rugby is still king in New Zealand.
What can we expect from New Zealand fans at the tournament this summer? Obviously, as you mentioned, 16 years since the last World Cup. Will they be raring to go? Will they be chomping at the bit? Or will there be a degree of pessimism? Like, what's the general feeling from the fans?
Well, we're wonderful travellers. So to get anywhere, you've got to leave the country. So, one of the great things is there'll be a large number of expat Kiwis that call the United States, Canada, and Mexico home. There'll be a lot from Europe that'll be wanting to make this trip as well. It's not often, it's almost generational that New Zealand get to this world stage. So the white noise, as they're called, have mobilised. They're ready to go. I think in 2010 it was a little bit of a peculiarity to be back on that world stage. I think in 2026 there's a feeling that we deserve to be there and that we should be there, and the fans are going to follow suit. I do think with everything that's going on in the moment, that's probably curtailed or dampened the spirits of some, but I think you can expect New Zealand fans to stick on well beyond New Zealand's participation in the tournament and join the fun. I feel like we are a poor man's island, if you want, in terms of our supporters. So we will be there for a very good time. Great companions to have alongside you, and but very much. We're a funny old bunch down here, very humble, very just happy to be here. You can probably even hear it in some of my rhetoric. So they'll be passionate, but they'll be realistic and tempering their expectations and hoping and dreaming that maybe this team can do something.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of similarities in the cultures between New Zealand and the UK. Is the football culture quite similar as well? What sort of things do fans do? Do you have the same sort of like witty chants going at each other? Do you have halftime pints and pies? Are there similarities to be drawn between the fans?
Look, I wish we had the English football culture. I really do. We've got elements of it. There's a rivalry which is being developed in that A-League that I referenced between Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix. It's a bit of a one-way rivalry at the moment because Wellington, who have been in the league longer, are yet to defeat the upstarts from Auckland. So the Ultras, as we call them, the Port and the Yellow Fever. There is a nice rivalry between the two. A lot of the chants that you hear from the Port are borrowed and adapted from what you hear in the stands over there in the UK. So there isn't so much of a Kiwiness to the support. It's a photocopy or a carbon copy as much as possible. But you also see it in our rugby support. We are not great supporters. It's almost we're terrified of losing rather than getting in and behind the team. So at an All Whites game, probably the most witty or clever you get is a clap 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 All Whites. So there are some witty and clever people in there, but no, there isn't the same level of commitment to the cause. I'd suggest it's coming through with the two professional clubs that we have here, but at grassroots park level, there's some clever guys. Old mate Bazza down the leaning on the club bar is the funniest man in, and will lead a few chants. But by and large, it's pretty much park football as you would understand it in the UK at club level down here.
Nice. Right, we'll move on to the section we call the scouting report. So here we'll just find out a little bit more about the team and what we can expect from the Kiwis, from the All Whites, I should say, this summer. So to kick us off, Seamus, who are, for the British fans tuning in, who are we going to recognise beyond Chris Wood, as we've mentioned? Is there anyone else in the squad that we're going to know or remember?
Well, Tyler Bindon is a teenage defender that's signed on the books at Nottingham Forest, is currently out on loan at Sheffield United. He had a difficult start to his career at Sheffield United, but has started to really find his feet there and, marked recently with a few man-of-the-match performances. He's come back to play for the national team in the most recent FIFA series, and his status has been elevated. He's the son of New Zealand women's national team, or former New Zealand women's national team goalkeeper. So if he is selected in the final 26 to make that trip to North America, that will complete perhaps a world first or a rare mother-son combination to play at a FIFA World Cup, which is quite a cool thing to achieve. Ben Waine is another name that is probably familiar to some with Port Vale's FA Cup run. A diehard Newcastle fan. He scored the goal which tipped Sunderland out of the FA Cup, which was pretty happy for him. I think he even popped the Shearer celebration as he reeled away as well, which is a name there. Liberato Kakachi, who's worn the captain's armband in Chris Wood's absence recently, is a top left back for Wrexham, currently under an injury cloud like Woodsy is as well. So he's a name that might be familiar. But there is one north of the border there, which is Elijah Just, who's doing some really good things for Motherwell in the Scottish Premier League. He's popped up and been Celtic's nemesis a couple of times already this season. And in catching up with him down here in New Zealand, there's talk perhaps that he might be on his way across to Celtic for next season. He's plied his trade in Denmark and Europe for a few years and is now having the opportunity in the SPL to really show what he can do. And he's in a real purple patch of form at the moment. So he's one that I really would look to the future as being a potential to follow Woodsy into that league. There's another player, Marko Stamenic, who was on the books at Forest, is at Swansea now, who's worn the captain's armband also for New Zealand. And those are probably 4 or 5 of the names that would be familiar. There's a real scrap at the moment for the number 1 shirt, whether it's Max Crocombe, who's at Millwall, or whether it's Alex Poulsen, whose parent club is Bournemouth, but is out on loan in Poland at the moment, is a conversation, and one that I think Darren Bazeley, the coach, will have a little bit of a headache on. They played one match each recently, and I think Poulsen, who's the younger of the 2 goalkeepers, might get the nod to start with the gloves at the World Cup. So there is a strong British connection, and we'd love to see some more players out the back of this competition pick up contracts, after this tournament as well. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you're right on the shop window.
100%, yeah. Looking at the group, Belgium, Egypt, Iran, how do you think New Zealand will get on?
I think the key is the first match against Iran. I think that game in Los Angeles, nothing short of 3 points will be the target for Darren Bazeley's side. Excuse me. If you look at it, Iran, let's be honest, they're not going to have the ideal preparation for this World Cup. It's a game that you should be targeting to take 3 points from. I think if they're able to get a win in that first match, it sets them up nicely to play against Egypt, who they have played in recent years, to maybe set their stall out and scrap away for a point. And 4 points could be enough to get through in third place. I think Belgium is a free hit. And a chance to try some things and test some things. But I don't think Darren Bazeley or the squad will be looking past the Iran match. Whether Iran front up and whether it is Iran in that first match is another conversation. But as it stands, that's all you can be preparing for. And it's a real exciting opportunity. It really is. That is at the foot of these footballers, and one that's been building for a few years now. I think we were desperately disappointed to miss out on Qatar 4 years ago. Falling in the intercontinental playoff to Costa Rica, and I think this is a real generation of footballers that have got the ability to do something on the world stage. And right now I've got tempered but realistic expectations, depending on that first result.
100%. Yeah, makes total sense, and I totally agree. Well, I mean, no disrespect to Costa Rica, I do remember that game. It was just such a shame not to have New Zealand, but they're back in obviously this summer. What would constitute a good tournament for the All Whites? Would it be as simple as saying getting out of the group, or obviously no World Cup match win as of yet? Could a good tournament be winning a game but not getting out of the group, or is that too simplistic?
I flip-flopped this in my mind as I've thought about this conversation through the day. I think I started by saying a win would be good, but I don't think that's aiming high enough for this team. I think getting out of the group is the real mission that Darren Bazeley has set. I think his narrative around it has been around building of that would be something special. He was part of the coaching staff at an under-17 World Cup in Nigeria back in 2009. That was the first New Zealand team to ever get out of any group, no matter what stage. And I think that's probably whet his appetite for trying to do something really special. So I think anything less than getting out of the group, there will be a disappointed lot of New Zealand fans for sure.
Who is New Zealand's talisman? Who's the guy they're going to be looking to sort of lead them to glory, whatever glory may look like? Is it as simple as it's Chris Wood and that's it, or is there anybody else who's going to be kind of coming to the fore this summer?
Look, I think if you asked me 6 months ago, I would say it's Chris Wood or bust. I think the fact that he has been injured and the All Whites have had to work out what they do if he's not in the 11 has been a good thing for this group. I think there probably has been an over-reliance on Chris and the brilliance of get the ball to Woodsy and something will happen. And when you are preparing a side for the reality of perhaps not having him, that's allowed other players to step into the fore. In terms of a talisman, there's a player, Sarpreet Singh, who I think is wonderful on his day. He was signed from the Wellington Phoenix to the German giants Bayern Munich back in 2019, and then COVID hit, and his world really went a little bit insular. He's bounced around a few clubs. He's arrived back at Wellington trying to get into form and then picked up an injury in his first match back playing. So that's been a frustration for him, where he might have had 10 matches and a few goals under his belt coming into a World Cup. But he's the kind of player that operates in a number 10 role, in a front three that sit behind the target of Chris Wood, that has the ability on their day to pick a pass, to slide someone in, and quite an intelligent footballer. I think flair players is probably where New Zealand lack. But in saying that, if you look at players within the squad, Sarpreet Singh, Elijah Just, they do have that little bit of magic. Even a Ryan Thomas, who's been in the Dutch Eredivisie for a long time now, they have that in their locker to be able to unlock a defence, to play a pass. And when you have a finisher, the quality of Chris Wood potentially being able to snap up those chances, something magic can happen. It is going to be those magic moments. It's perhaps the way New Zealand play, one or two moments in a game where they have to be clinical and have to take their chances. And then it becomes roll up your sleeves and a backs against the wall performance, which we know we are capable. That's in our DNA. That is what we are able to do. But I think it's being able to surprise with our ability to play that is going to be the key for this side in 2026.
Yeah, we obviously mentioned Chris Wood has been out injured for much of the season. Has it been generally quite a positive thing for New Zealand to have this period of having to trial stuff without him and kind of coming up with a plan B? Not least because obviously if you get to the World Cup and he's either not firing or not fit, then that, I guess, will be something, will be a plan for New Zealand to kind of use. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it is. I think Chris's injury has coincided with a pretty wretched run of form too. I think we were 7 matches, 7 losses before the 4-1 win against Chile. So, I think going into a World Cup, if you've lost 8 straight, it doesn't fill you with confidence, particularly losing 2 at home before you get on the plane to North America. So the fact that they have been able to work out how to win without Woodsy, I think will be a huge shot in the arm for these players, but also for the football public who are pessimistic sometimes, or realistic was pragmatic maybe is another way to describe the expectations. But there is enough knowledge and enough we've seen enough from this group of players to expect more, to expect us not to just to go to the world stage and to make up the numbers. I think I saw recently that Chris is returning to the Nottingham Forest first team squad. I think that's wonderful. I think the timing of that is excellent in terms of the result against Chile and then this good news. I think there's still some injury concerns over what would be Darren Bazeley's best 11, the likes of a Liberato Kakachi that I mentioned before, who didn't make the last trip down, who's struggled all season with a hamstring injury. I think those two players, again, to your point, it forces people to have to think. It forces Darren and the coaching staff to have to think about how they can be creative and how they can unlock defences and recreate those magic moments that we all hope for.
Obviously, we mentioned Darren Bazeley, English coach, although he's been in the New Zealand setup for years, really. What's the verdict on him? What do fans think about him?
Look, again, I think it's been a frustration. I don't think we can hide behind that fact. I think Darren himself, was frustrated after the 2-0 loss against Finland at home. Didn't really recognise that side. They didn't do what he thought they were capable of, and he cut a pretty frustrated figure. As I mentioned, I referenced earlier, I was invited into the camp the night before the Chile game. We had a really interesting evening. It was an informal evening, but it was what we call here whakapapa evening, which is acknowledging and connecting back to those that have been before. So members of the 1982 squad were invited in, members of the 2010 squad were invited in, and of course the current crop of 2026. And the idea behind it was to link the stories between those 3 groups and pass the knowledge on and really acknowledge your time in the shirt. And I think Darren, while he isn't a Kiwi by birth, really understands those concepts, which you don't have to be Māori in this country to understand what they mean, but really has worked hard through osmosis and through personal development to understand that these are the sorts of things that will talk to the playing group, that will unlock and be able to really cement what we have and what is special and what makes us unique in this part of the world. So he's also been, as you rightly point out, a consistent. I referenced his first, assistant coaching role back in 2009. He's worked essentially hands-on with almost every one of these players as they've gone through the age group sides. I was lucky enough to be his team administrator through one of the under 17 or two under 17 cycles, where you had the likes of an Alex Rufer come through, and players, he's known them since they were 14, 15 years of age. So he has the ability, almost as a father figure or as a fun uncle figure, to be able to connect in with these guys as well and know where they come from, which speaks to that concept of whakapapa. He understands, he knows their parents, he knows their high schools, he knows the struggles that they've had when they've gone away and things haven't worked out for them overseas. So I think he's really well liked within New Zealand football corridors and within New Zealand football hearts and minds. And I think the frustration probably recently has been that the results haven't come. So while he does have these strong connections, it just hasn't clicked on the field. And the timing of that 4-1 win against Chile, first win over South American opposition, could not have come at a better time for Darren, and also, the football family to get behind him and send the team off and on a positive note.
Yeah, does that 4-1 win, as you mentioned, after quite a dismal run of defeats, does that suggest a corner's been turned, or is there still plenty of work to do before the tournament?
Look, I think there's no doubt there's still plenty of work to do before the tournament, but that's a massive boost. I mean, if you go into a World Cup having lost 2 games on home soil, and New Zealand don't play in front of their home fans all that often, it's becoming more of a regular occurrence. But the chance to see the players come back and wear the shirt in front of friends and family is an important thing, and it works both ways. Whether the team has turned the corner, I think the results at the World Cup will probably determine that. I think we do have this high-profile fixture with England beforehand. I think the team behind the scenes are working really hard to try and secure some more warm-up games in North America. I think the key to success in 2010 was the series of matches that the team played before they got to the group stage. They almost played a group stage before the group stage. And I feel like New Zealand, if they are to be successful, need to find another at least 2 games. They can be behind closed doors. But if they are able to really spend some time together on the training field, but also in a match situation, the natural nature of New Zealanders is that they come together when they're overseas, is that they really, really galvanise themselves. But nothing beats playing at the very, very highest level against the world's best players. So if Darren and the playing group is able to get 3 quality warm-up matches before they hit Iran, I do think this team is due for something special.
Will New Zealand be pragmatic in their approach this summer? Will they be looking to grind out results, or is, possibly in the Iran game, they're going to be attacking teams? What's the tactical setup going to be like?
I do think it'll be horses for courses. I think in that first game, it does have to be an adventurous New Zealand team that we do see. I think nothing short of 3 points. I labour that point again. I think nothing short of 3 points will be successful, or will be deemed success for this team, or positive for this team. You referenced the unbeaten run in 2010, which on paper looks amazing, but 3 draws is not enough to qualify you out of the group. We could draw 3 games at this World Cup and not come out of the group, and I feel like it would be a disappointment. It would be a failure. So I think it won't be necessarily a pragmatic lineup that you see against Iran, but depending on that result, then I think the strategy comes into play against Egypt, where it might be, let's set the stall out and look to get a draw, look to catch them on the counter, look to eke a result. And then, as I mentioned, against Belgium, I think that's a free hit and an opportunity to maybe test themselves and see what they can come up with before locking in a round of 32 game. I really do think a round of 32 is the bare minimum for this group. So perhaps where you have seen a pragmatic New Zealand team in the past, I think you might see a very different version in 2026 in North America.
What would you say is New Zealand's biggest strength, and what would you say is their biggest weakness heading into the tournament?
I think the biggest strength is perhaps other teams underestimating our ability to play football. I don't think there is an underestimation that we are a difficult opponent to play against, but I do think there is perhaps not an appreciation that this team is able to bop teams if they are in the mood. You won't see it all the time. It's not going to be a 90-minute maestro performance, but there will be flashes and moments of these games where I think New Zealand will be on top. And I think that might catch teams off guard and perhaps not be expected. I think the biggest strength of New Zealand is New Zealand. I think it's that ability to unite on foreign ground in difficult circumstances and delve into the psyche about what makes us Kiwis. But we can play. And I think this group of players, and that was very much the message from that 1982 and 2010 group that came together, is do not underestimate the fact that you are on the world stage. You deserve to be there, and don't fall into the underdog tag, which is such it's a double-edged sword, because it does mean that expectations are managed, but it also limits your belief and expectation of yourself. And this is a team with players that are playing at the very best level, and when they do have the opportunity to spend time together and be Kiwi together, then magic things can potentially happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the double-edged sword. I like that. You're right. It can work both ways, can't it? It can benefit you, but it can also psychologically kind of put you back a little bit. Just lastly on this section, you get to turn one England player Kiwi for the World Cup. Who are you picking and why?
Well, again, I would have said Ben Chilwell a few years ago, because he is a Kiwi. He should have been playing for us. We overlooked him. We butchered it. But we do have a great left back in Liberato Kakachi. We've got a great deputy in Francis de Vries who's doing good things. I think this team's biggest weakness is lack of goals. It's dependency on a Chris Wood. So if we were able to borrow, I don't know, a Harry Kane, a Dominic Solanke, a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we'd even take an Ollie Watkins or a Jamie Vardy. We would take a front man that is able to score goals, that is able to perhaps take pressure off Chris Wood. I think that is going to be our team's kryptonite, is the ability to put the ball in the back of the net when those few chances perhaps come our way. So if we were able to have a marksman alongside Chris Wood, that would be a very, very happy thing. It's a bit late to domicile or to get one married to a Kiwi Sheila down here, but who knows for 2030? Maybe we'll see what we can do and expatriate one of those. But there's a lot of goals that probably Thomas Tuchel will be leaving behind. And geez, I would love to have some of those goals in the all white shirt. That's for sure.
Right, we'll wrap up with some quick fire questions about the World Cup. So I'll run through a few, and you let me know what the first thing that comes to your mind is. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Seamus. First and foremost, who is winning the World Cup?
I think Brazil. I think Brazil on US soil. I think they are a team that haven't met their own very high expectations in a long time at the biggest showcase. And I think they could be due. I think the manager that's come in provides a point of difference. I think there's undoubted ability in the squad, and I just think on US soil, Brazil could be the side to lift the trophy.
Interesting, yeah. Where did New Zealand finish? How do they get on?
Round of 32. We get out of the group and we go to the round of 32.
Fingers crossed. Who's winning the Golden Ball? So the best player at the tournament.
Jeepers, you're putting me on the spot here. That's a difficult one. Look, if
possibly a Brazilian player, if Brazil in your
I was going to say if it's Brazil that take the trophy, it'll be any one of four of those that can turn it on the day. Vinicius Junior.
What about the Golden Boot?
Oh, best scorer, jeepers. I think Haaland might even get there. I think he could. I think Norway could go deep in this tournament. Again, it's hard to see him not scoring goals wherever he goes. Although we did keep him scoreless at the Under-20 World Cup in 2019. He was in the back of George Stanger and Nando Peinecke's pocket. So we'll dine out on that one.
Chris Wood or Dan Carter?
Oh, Woodsy. Any day of the week.
Wellington or Auckland?
I live closer to Auckland, and I am a fan of the City of Sails.
North Island or South Island?
I live in the North Island, but you know what? I'm falling in love with the South Island, so I'm gonna go with the mainland down there.
Carl Urban or Anthony Starr? I'm hoping
Anthony Starr.
The boys. Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
Anthony Starr. If you've watched Outrageous Fortune, you know that he's of absolute talent.
Yeah, for any of the boys fans watching, that's Billy Butcher and Homelander. Lord of the Rings or Flight of the Conchords?
Oh, that's not even apples and apples.
No.
Flight of the Conchords. That quirky sense of humour speaks to me, and is quintessentially Kiwi.
Nice. And lastly, New Zealand or Australia? Who invented pavlova?
That's not even a question. That is not even a question. And if you ask the same question of the Australian that you get on this podcast, and they say Australia, They're lying to themselves.
So again, to folks not from New Zealand or Australia, this is apparently a massive debate.
Huge.
So
it's not a debate. I can't believe they're claiming it.
Well, we will. We haven't had the Australia guests on, and I will ask them, and we'll see what they say. And finally, to wrap us up completely, what is your controversial / outrageous prediction for the World Cup?
I've gone Inception on this. I've gone multi-layer.
Nice.
Islamic Republic of Iran are either withdrawn or withdraw from the tournament. They are replaced by the highest ranked team who hasn't qualified but made the final stage, which is Italy. New Zealand play Italy in the first match of the group stage and draw 1-1, emulating the heroes of 2010. We pick up a win against Egypt, a plucky loss against Belgium. We finish second and bow out at the round of 32 against the Socceroos.
I tell you what, if that happens, what a flipping entertaining tournament that would be for New Zealand. Heartbreaking. But, oh my days, do you know what? That is by far the most entertaining, controversial prediction we've had. And I'm rooting for, I mean, maybe not the round of 32 defeat to Australia, because that doesn't sound very good. But everything else, I'm absolutely rooting for. That would be magic. Well, Seamus, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really do appreciate your time. That's it for our New Zealand preview. Let us know in the comments how you think the All Whites will get on this summer. And join us next time for more stories, insights, and deep dives as our global scouting mission continues as we count down the days to the FIFA World Cup this summer. Until next time, keep making football great again.